Dinesh D'Souza showed up with talking points. Destiny actually did research.
Everyone in the South is a moron. They're living in a bubble. They don't understand reality. And therefore, one side is completely right and the other side is completely wrong.
We're just citing the Russian leaks from the DCCC.
Absolutely not.
Hillary,
We're citing Hunter Biden's own business partner.
No.
Yes.
No.
I really hope Stephen presses him on it. I really do.
Spectators from the outside.
Today, we're going to be breaking down Dinesh D'Souza versus Destiny. Dinesh D'Souza is a gentleman who is an apologist for the Trump administration and the MAGA movement. Destiny, aka Stephen Bennell II, is one of the best liberal and progressive debaters, even though his personal life is an absolute mess. He's funny, he's charismatic, he's mean, he's strange, he does all sorts of crazy stuff. And so typically he puts on excellent debates. Apparently, at least according to the Destiny sympathetic crowd, this is a blowout on Destiny's behalf. So let's go ahead and watch the fun and break it down.
What is not
Wasn't
a lie?
that a lie?
What is not
Wasn't
a lie?
that a lie though? When he held up the sign, didn't he lie to the American public, to you and me and everybody else in here and the entire world when he said these are the tariffs that every other country has on us? That was a lie, right?
Well, it was a negotiating tactic.
It was a lie to negotiate.
It's a negotiating tactic, and you
Well,
actually
the costs
know
get
it
too high.
because
I
you
do
just
know it.
admitted it.
I didn't
But
admit it.
earlier you were trying to calm the audience.
I was giving a simplified answer to somebody who found out they just
Simplified answer,
who
which
just
is a
found out
wrong
what fractional
answer.
reserve banking was.
Please welcome to the stage, Dinesh D'Souza and Destiny.
In Pangburn's defense, I do understand that this can feel like a little bit overproduced, but apparently Pangburn is a events management company that run, I don't know if they do like concerts or public speaking events or whatever, but they're a independently successful company that admires Stephen to the point that despite Stephen's personal foibles, they were willing to effectively commit to a nation-spanning tour, setting up public events for Stephen, where he would debate members of college campuses, TPUSA, and public intellectuals. So actually, shout out to Pangburn for bringing us the content.
How you doing tonight?
I'm good.
So I think we were given pretty broad leeway over, I guess, what to chat about tonight, insofar as kind of like Trump and MAGA and the current state of the U.S. and kind of like where we've come, where we're going in relation to that. Do you have any strong thoughts you want to start us off with, or do you want me to just get right into it?
Well, let's get into it.
Okay, so I don't know how much you know about me, but I've been kind of like a YouTube political commentator, influencer guy for maybe about 10 years. I followed with great detail a lot of the political, factual, legal, whatever stuff going on with both sides, especially over the past 5 or 6 years. And one of the most kind of troubling things that I've seen develop is we are totally and completely separated in terms of factual reality, in terms of where like the left is living and where MAGA is living. And I mean, my argument is that I would say the conservatives and MAGA and even people in positions like yours have contributed really heavily towards that like deliberate muddying of the record so that people aren't aware of what's actually happening in this country. And I guess like the first event, I guess, or thing I would kind of like to center on is I'm curious what your understanding is of like the Mar-a-Lago documents case for the classified information that Trump took from the White House and refused to return.
I'm happy to get into it, but before we do, if I can explore the idea you just mentioned a moment ago about alternative realities. I assume what you're saying is that the left lives in a certain type of a bubble, but it's a reality-based bubble. The right lives in a bubble that is fake and not reality-based. And so, according to you, one half of the country is essentially deluded. and the other half of the country is sane. See, I think this is a very poor way to try to conceptualize politics in general. It's the reason it's a poor way is that if you look at any political divide, particularly the really severe political divides, if we go back, for example, to 1860, you could take the view that, which was the view of the South, Lincoln was a moron, Lincoln is a dictator, Lincoln's an idiot, and the Republicans in the North make no sense at all. Or you could take the opposite view, that everyone in the South is a moron, they're living in a bubble, they don't understand reality, and therefore one side is completely right and the other side is completely wrong. To me,
Okay. Listen, so if he's going to make an argument that this is like bad for discourse and bad for diplomacy and therefore you engage in conflict that is unnecessary, sure. I'm really wondering where he's going to take this. But I would argue that that is the exact post hoc perspective on what happened at the time. Because in the South at the time, please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, they were making the arguments that like Black people are a different kind of human, that from a scientific perspective, that they're almost not even the same species as white people, that the Bible has marked them as the people of Cain and talks about slavery. Therefore, slavery is not immoral. And owning people and forcing them to do hard labor for days on end for less than subsistence living, and being able to beat people if they don't comply with your work. This is a just and moral state of affairs ordained by God and ordained by science. That's like one narrative from the South. And then also, not only should the South be permitted to continue this, what a lot of people view as a moral horror, it should be up to the individual states spreading westward about whether or not they want to be slave states. And the prohibition of slavery in new territories is part of what motivated the Civil War, because the slave states knew that if the new territories were not slave states, then what would happen is eventually they would be outnumbered in the representative government and slavery would be banned through the representative government, and they didn't want to abide by that. And since the United States was established as a confederation of sovereign states that just happened to have a overarching federal government, they thought it was within their legalistic rights to secede from the Union. Now, that's one narrative. The Union narrative was that, like, yes, we're technically sovereign states, but if we dissolve into sovereign states that are not unified, eventually we're going to be picked off and destroyed by our rivals. Therefore, secession is an existential threat to the whole. Also, slavery is morally abhorrent for 10,000 reasons that I'm not going to bore you with. And limiting the expansion west is moral and just. And eventually, slavery should be abolished, because the truth is that industrialization is providing such a surplus of labor that this should be expanded into the agricultural world, and slaves should be emancipated and granted some level of dignity and humanity. And maybe Black African descended slaves should be repatriated back to Africa or an independent colony in Central or South America. But realistically, they're human beings. And they're human beings that should have some level of equality and dignity. These are two completely separate narratives that must be resolved. And I hope even Southern apologists would be like, yeah, maybe Black people are human and are deserving of equality and dignity, like under the law. I hope they would at least concede that, 200 years after, 200,000 Southerners were shot to death for the crime of trying to continue the institution of slavery. So anyways, if Dinesh is making, I'm going to try to steelman Dinesh as much as possible, because I know it'll piss you guys off and it'll make for some fun conversations in chat. But if the argument is us living in alternative realities is what leads to unnecessary civil war, I'll take that as an argument. But if the argument is that like the South wasn't delusional or immoral, then Dinesh is a effing a-hole.
Me, the reason this is a very poor way to comprehend reality is that it requires you ultimately to believe that virtually one half of the entire country lives in delusion.
Sorry, real quick. Daniel Mayer asked an important question. What lore stuff do you usually cover? Warhammer 40K, Star Wars, and sci-fi right now.
Democracy would make no sense if this were truly the case. In reality, the complex thing to do, particularly when there is a divide, and I think this is what we have to work toward, and it'd be really interesting if we did that in this debate, is if I can advance a theory about Trump that explains not just the 75 million people or so who voted for him, but also the 71 million or so who voted against him. And if I can account for both, and similarly, I would demand of you the same thing. You advance a theory that is a little more sophisticated than simply saying everybody who votes for Trump is a dummy, or they're listening to other dummies and swallowing their dumb stuff. This does not do justice to our fellow citizens. So
I'm okay with this line of argumentation because while I do think that Trump people are either dumb or self-deluding or politically sociopathic, I think that the steelman of the Trump administration is, yes. Truth Seeker says, so Connor is going to fight for Dinesh D'Souza's life in the Lion's Den. Correct. My own audience, the Lion's Den. But if you look at what's motivating Trump people, they effectively signal to wealth inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, and the dissolution of the social fabric. And they're craving what they believed. They might be nostalgic for a time period that didn't exist the way that they thought it existed. But they're craving the economic dynamism of the 90s. They're craving the social cohesion of the 50s and 60s. And so that's the dissolution of the social fabric. When it comes to existential technological shifts, they're worried about AI. They're worried about neoliberal economic policies and internationalism gutting America's industry and effectively creating the Rust Belt. And many of Trump's voters live in the Rust Belt. And so they care about existential technological shifts, even though arguably Trump makes these things worse. Rapid demographic change, I would say probably the one way in which Trump has succeeded as a politician is he's at least gestured and effectuated policy in reference to rapid demographic change. Technically, with the repeal of Roe versus Wade, there's incentive to have more kids. Whether or not that actually happens is a different thing. But there's incentive to have more kids. So that would boost the native population's birth rates. And then when it comes to immigration, he's stymied immigration, which most MAGA people see as a foreign invasion of Democrats using Central and South Americans and Middle Eastern and North African folk to mass import into our country to change the character of the nation. That's why I view these people as national conservatives. They want to conserve the current nation. And then when it comes to wealth inequality, Trump uses economic populism as a way to rally his base. Now, the truth is that all of his policies make wealth inequality worse. Slashing taxes, increasing tariffs, et cetera, those are the things. So descriptively, in my opinion, the Trumpists, the MAGA people, they can be worried about real things, but they have been deluded by a false prophet and a piece of shit who engages in policies that makes all of these things worse, not better. And I think that's where we jump the shark into delusional territory. That's my steel man of Dinesh so far.
I'm just objecting to this framing of reality. We can discuss specific aspects of reality, and I'm happy to start where you want, and then I'll take you where I want to go. But I'd like you to comment, first of all, if you agree with me that each of us needs to advance tonight a theory that is good enough, not just to feed the prejudices of the people on our own side, which may be the majority of the audience here, but genuinely accounts for the other side.
So I would agree, but I would disagree that a genuine accounting for both sides requires you to admit or it requires you to concede that both sides have a similar factual foundation.
There you go.
Sometimes when you go to the hospital, sometimes you get diagnosed with a really bad disease. Sometimes the prognosis is it's untreatable. I would be uncomfortable if the doctor told me, well, we're looking at two different diagnoses, but this one is really bad, so we're just going to favor the other one instead. Unfortunately, that's not how the real world works. It might be that at times in our history, there are certain sides of our country that are deluded. Now, you used the word dummy. I would say they're not stupid. I think that the capacity.
I think a lot of the voters are stupid. I think a lot of the leaders are actually quite cunning and manipulative. Tofu says, do you still do Audible? Have you checked out Dungeon Crawler Carl yet? No, but I do have my Audible account, and I'm trying to work up the nerve to go through all the Horus Heresy books so I can break them down as a part of the Warhammer lore project.
For even an ordinary person that, you know, a pretentious liberal or some online guy might say, oh, this guy is an idiot. They're not stupid. Like, people have a tremendous capacity for a ton of information. But I would argue that there has been an entire conservative media apparatus that has been aimed at engaging in the delusion of these people for the purposes of trying to make the unappealing appealing or the indefensible defensible. And that's the thing that I'm kind of attacking. Like, is half the country deluded? I would say right now, to a large extent, yes, but that's not because they're stupid, and it's not by accident, it's by design. And I think part of what I would really like to dig into is part of it is not even being able to agree fundamentally on like things that are factually true. You brought up that north-south divide. The difference that you were talking.
Javon says, just watch you talking to such an Adam. It feels like when you were talking to Adam, he only gets about 10% of the information. Then he asks a question proving he didn't listen. Listen, I've promised myself that I will be ultra charitable to Adam and nice. But yeah, sometimes I feel like when I'm talking to Adam, he ignores 80% of what I've said.
Talking about there was one of legal perspective, was a conceptual perspective difference on, do states have the right to secede from the union? You know, how much right does an individual state have over the federal government? That same debate taking place today, you know, it would be somebody saying in the South, oh, we don't even have slaves. All of the people here live equally. And, you know, people in the North saying, you know, in the South, they literally torture these people and throw them in the river for fun, and they don't even use them for work, right? That's the level of, assuming both sides are being deluded, right? That's the level of delusion that we're on today. We don't have disagreements in law or disagreements in concept or idea or narrative about the country. It's like very foundational disagreements on things that we shouldn't have that much of a factual disagreement on.
Well, so I take it that what you're saying is that in the Civil War, there were genuinely intelligent people on both sides, and they actually disagreed about what kind of America they wanted. They disagreed about their economic interests. They disagreed about on constitutional interpretation. They disagreed about whether they wanted to retain the status quo or go into a new type of America. Now, I would argue that we're having very much that exact same kind of fundamental debate right now. Let's just take, for example, the phrase, make America great again. Bit of a cliche, grant, but I would say that the implicit in that is a big idea. That there was an America that we lived in. You could say it's the America of the 50s, the America of 1965, the America of 1980. You can kind of pick your own preferred date, but that things worked better in this country before, in the past.
This is one of my frustrations with this like nostalgia, this palingenesis, is that when you look at these time periods, they're actually quite rough. And the nostalgia that people crave is within their bubble. So if you're talking about the 50s and 60s, you're talking about before segregation. So yes, we have this picturesque conception of the world where white folks are middle class and they're working stable jobs and they're paying into their retirements and they have 2 or 3 kids and a white picket fence and a dog. And that is a healthy chunk of the experience for white Americans. Or for working class Americans, they're working in heavy industry. And while they hate their jobs, because if you actually go watch interviews from those people, they hate their jobs, they are still able to provide for a middle class family in a, you know, not necessarily super populous part of America. And so that economic stability is that economic and social stability is craved. However, if you look at the 60s and the 70s, that craving of that social stability was rebelled by and effectively shredded by the color TV revolution, by the hippies, by the academic left, and by the population at large, rebelling largely to Vietnam. Vietnam was crazy. That was not an idealistic part of history. And then if you also look at the 60s and 70s, it was a time of extreme domestic turmoil when it came to not just Vietnam, but the civil rights movement. And if you look at the stats, especially after the 1960s, the drug war kicks off and homicides basically double all the way through the 1990s. And so this idealism about the youth of the boomers and how much better the world was is not borne out in statistics. And if you look at the statistics since the 1990s, we've cut almost all crime in half. Okay. Our economic prospects are worse. I think like the working class has grown. It's become worse to be working class. It's more difficult to survive. However, the middle class is still doing quite well and crime is still cut in half. So what we really need to do is we need to figure out how to reintegrate the economic prosperity of the 50s and 60s, but also make it more available to a broader swath of Americans. And by the way, even if you're nostalgic about the 50s or the 60s or the dynamism of the 80s, economic dynamism of the 80s or 90s, even if you love all those things, Donald Trump is the worst person to bring about that reality. So once again, description, okay. Prescription sucks butt.
We have messed up. We have become more polarized, more hateful, more violent.
Not borne out by statistics. So just delusion right there. Once again, from the 60s to the 90s, we doubled our homicide rate. And then since the 90s to the present, we've cut our homicide rate in half.
Our goals have begun to pull further apart. I would argue that in the Reagan years, for example, the debates were not so much about goals, but about means. We all agreed that America, if you were to take a poll in 1980 or the early 80s and ask Americans, do you think America should be strong, prosperous? Do you think we should have law and order? Do you think America should be an example to the world? Do you think that most people have given the chance who want to come here? You get yes, 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 and yes. Now, you might disagree if we create a prosperous pie, how should that pie be shared? The argument was about that. But on the need for prosperity, on the principles of the founding, no disagreement about goals. Now, we are in America where we can't agree about goals. And I would say that one half of the country, my half, Trump's half, we think that there's a better America we want to go back to. You don't. You want to.
Correct, because the stats don't bear out that that part of America was actually better for everybody. And the bubble of economic and social stability that you believe was there wasn't necessarily a mirage. I'm sure the people who lived in it felt good about it, but it's more social media and advertisement and suburbs than it is reality.
Take us into some progressive utopia. So right there, this is hardly a disagreement about facts. I mean, I guess it could be a disagreement about facts if you want to argue the facts of what life was like in 1980 or what the GDP was.
Yeah, we should argue about that. I wonder how Stephen's going to take it, but yes, these things are arguable.
I'm happy to discuss that. But I guess what I'm really saying is it is a conflict of visions. We want a society in which immigrants come to assimilate. We want a society in which affirming your identity takes a subordinate role to our identity as Americans. We want a society in which free markets are the engine to prosperity. We want a society in which we recognize that the world is made up of very dangerous people And sometimes you have to smash in a few heads in order to protect your own interests. We want to live in a society where there's the rule of law, and if you come here illegally, there's every right to send you home. There's no such thing as a good lawbreaker or a bad lawbreaker any more than there's such a thing as good discrimination and bad discrimination. So these, I've just articulated several, and I could keep going, principles. This has nothing to do with whether Trump had a bag of documents in Mar-a-Lago. It is a conflict of visions, and it seems to me that you are denying that. Either that or you just agree right now that all the principles I've articulated are yours as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say exactly that. The issue that I have with the more abstract, high-level conceptual conversations is that everybody agrees with these things. That
You do?
people should, yeah, of course, people should be here relatively, legally as far as you can be. People should be here
As far as you can be. What is it? This is kind of like saying I favor law breaking. I don't favor law breaking unless it's
Sure, I say as far as it can be because some immigration stuff is hazy. So, for instance, sometimes conservatives seem like they're okay with asylum seekers, like they suddenly are with South Africans who are white. Other times they seem like they don't believe in asylum seeking at all. So I'm cutting out a little bit of on the edge here for presidential things like TPS, temporary protected status, things like DACA. For the most part, broadly speaking, I largely agree that everybody should be here in as legal process as possible. I think that people should, as far as they can, try not to break any laws. People get speeding tickets, obviously. You shouldn't be shot for this. But broadly speaking, everything you say, everybody agrees with. But the issue is that when we have these high-level conceptual disagreements, say, for instance, we should have a president who doesn't commit crimes, and then we have a president who has clearly committed crimes, and one side sees that very plainly, and the other side screams lawfare, that's not true. There is a factual distinction there. That's not a difference of ideology or a difference of vision. It's a difference of understanding factually of what's in the record. And the unfortunate thing is we're not talking about complicated physics or chemistry or biology. It's very simple facts. If you can read a simple indictment, you can see how things are laid out. And it should be a thing that 95% of the population can grasp and understand. Like, for instance, that Donald Trump took documents from the White House that he didn't have authorization to keep. He showed them to multiple people at Mar-a-Lago. He refused to cooperate first with the National Archives and Records Administration and then with the FBI. And then eventually his home was raided. Some documents were never recovered. The whole time he was in the complete and total wrong in multiple levels, but the right refused to acknowledge this, screamed lawfare over and over again. And then we push them on things like, don't you think it's good to have like a rule of law? They appeal to these high-level concepts like, well, freedom and the past was good and all this. And it's like, well, if we can't talk about any particular instances of anything happening, it's a pointless conversation.
Well, I find that this
You who must not be named, 9276. I saw this on Pangburn yesterday. Man, watching Dinesh get dog walked brought me joy. Oh, dude, for a second, because Dinesh and Destiny, because I guess I have dyslexia or my eyes suck. I thought you were saying Destiny got dog walked yesterday. I was about to be like, wait, hold on. We haven't gotten to that part yet. Quick show before we continue. 125 people hanging out with us. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. I'll probably be starting a mind map momentarily because I think we should map out what Dinesh is saying because effectively, Dinesh. Yeah, exactly. We should mind map what we're saying because I think what Dinesh wants or what he says he wants is fine. Wanting a economically vibrant America, wanting a secure society, wanting law and order, wanting immigrants to come, quote unquote, the right way. These are all perfectly valid things to want. But then the question becomes, how do you execute these things? And when we get to the execution, Trump is a nightmare. And so I'm kind of hoping that Destiny holds him to account. Obama. True, Zarenthius. True.
habit is hardly confined to the right. I'm something of an expert
I'm going to pull up my paint right now just because I want to do something while I'm listening.
on the 2020 election, and I've given talks about it. And every time I talk about it, someone goes, well, there clearly is nothing wrong in the 2020 election because there were 50 cases where these things were adjudicated. Now, there's not a single case.
Wait, hold up. This is where it sounds like bullshit grifting. Number one, Donald Trump is promising in another 2 weeks. Notice how everything happens in 2 weeks or 2 months. Donald Trump is promising that he's going to release the outcome. Shut up, Fast and Bulbous. The He's been promising that he's going to release the proof of outcome determinative voter fraud in the 2020 election in the next 2 months. Is that going to happen? I would love to see it. He's been promising that since 2020. So I can't wait for that to finally get released. So this like appeal to skepticism needs to be validated by evidence. And so the mere fact that he's already bringing this up, and Dinesh himself and other people have had the ability to prove outcome determinative voter fraud for 5 years, is frustrating to me because it feels like bullshit.
In which the actual allegations of fraud were adjudicated on all
right, I'll put on my wig.
kinds of procedural obstacles or issues of standing. These cases were dismissed. You should have brought the case before the election. You had to do that. Obviously, the fraud was not obvious then. If you brought it after the election, it's moot. Or this is brought at the state level. It needs to be at the federal level. And so the procedural adjudication is considered adequate to establish the veracity or the validity of the 2020 election.
Just as a
Hold
quick
on,
thing.
I'll just finish my point and you can jump
we
in.
can do the 2020 election. So do you concede on the whole Mar-a-Lago thing that Trump was retaining documents, and then we can move to the
No, we
2020
haven't
election?
addressed Mar-a-Lago. I'm
Okay.
setting up the intellectual groundwork by saying that on the 2020 election, statements are made that are accepted as gospel by the left. Let's take a simple one that was repeated ad nauseum. The 2020 election was the safest, most secure election in U.S. history. To which I ask, where is the evidence that there was less fraud in 2020 than in 2016, 2012, 2008, 2004? Where is that demonstration? Who has actually done a comparative evaluation of the amount of fraud in recent, forget about old elections, and shown that there was less in 2020? The answer is not only has this never been demonstrated, it has never been attempted. And so an utterly idiotic statement, almost preposterous on its face. We know that this election we just had, and we're proclaiming it to be the safest ever, with zero empirical evidence produced to support that. And yet, the entire left, to my knowledge, without exception, went along, nodded its head, accepted this as true, became very scornful of any attempts to show the contrary. So doesn't this show factual dogmatism on the left that is just as corrosive as anything on the right?
No. So, I mean, we can go through any of these statements. I'm still putting a pin in the Mar-a-Lago thing because I think it's important.
I bet this hits if you have 80 IQ. I bet this hits hard if you have 80 IQ. It's like, how do we even know that the elections were secure? What you made a statement that this was the fairest and most secure election of all, and yet we don't have any statistics on how secure the elections are. I bet that slaps if you're an idiot. I bet that slaps if you're dumb as hell. Where's your evidence that there's outcome determinative voter fraud? You're the one who's claiming. By the way, I'm taking the wig off because I love my own natural, beautiful hair that I've been growing out. But I hope you appreciate me wearing the wig temporarily while I began painting. You're the one claiming outcome determinative voter fraud. So if the states are saying that the elections are certified, if they're saying they can't find evidence of the fraud, if Bill Barr and the DOJ are saying that they can't find evidence of voter fraud, that's outcome determinative. If they're saying that the states have already certified their elections, so they can't do anything. If the FBI is saying that this was one of the safest and freest and fairest elections, like it's not one intellectual or legal gatekeeper, it's a dozen of them compared to you, Dinesh D'Souza, and Trump, a known liar, just saying that there's outcome determinative voter fraud. So if there's a dozen reputable institutions that have survived decades, if not centuries, saying that everything's Gucci, but then you're saying it's the opposite, where is the evidence that it's the opposite? Olive Oil says, I love how Connor was going to steel man Dinesh, but once we got past the vague vision for the country, it became indefensible. Yeah, sorry, this is tough. It's hard to steel man that, okay? Because extreme claims require extreme evidence, right? So anyways, I'm gonna let this flow and keep painting, but quick show. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. We do have Patriarch with a membership, Fell Runner with a super chat, Grassroots with a very generous $50 super chat, and Charlie November with a gifted Counterpoints Politics membership. I parasocially love you. Thank you for being here. Let's go.
Go back to, but I'm very familiar with the 2020 election.
Okay.
I think the issue is that, one, when people say, well, it wasn't adjudicated on the facts, it was tossed on standing or procedural grounds, that's bad for the person bringing the case. If you're losing on standing, then you must have never had a serious case to begin with, because that is literally the easiest part of a case to survive. To build a prima facie case saying that I have authorization to bring this case in front of this court has subject matter jurisdiction, and it's the appropriate venue to hear the case, and here are my complaints where I'm alleging that a law was broken. In half these, they didn't even have the remedies that they were looking for was to toss the entire outcome of that election, which is an insane remedy. If you're looking for that, a court's not even going to bother to hear the case, because the whole point of a court hearing a case is that they're going to grant you some kind of relief. If a court can't do anything about it, then the court's not going to listen to it. Number one. Number two, for the evidence.
Dude, this is why I have such a conflicted relationship with Steven. I really do. Listen, guys, I have the same relationship with Steven that every orbiter has ever had. Okay? I have the same one. I think Steven's personal behavior in some degrees, hopefully it's gotten better since February of this year. But I think Destiny's personal behavior in a lot of ways is objectionable. I think that some people get hurt. I think, there's a lot of drama, this, that, the other, sex stuff, crazy behavior, et cetera, et cetera. But this is just an absolute annihilation from a debate standpoint. Okay, this is just an absolute fucking annihilation. Dinesh comes with talking points. Dinesh, makes some broad assertions that probably play to idiots. And then Destiny is like, well, let's get into the nitty gritty because I'm familiar with the nitty gritty. Let's fight about the nitty gritty. And then he says, boom, here's the nitty gritty. What's your response? And if Dinesh doesn't have a strong response here, to be clear, what Destiny has said is that these cases were frivolous in the first place because they didn't, from a fetus analogy perspective, these were miscarried within the first month. These did not even make it to the viability stage. So how is it that Trump, the best negotiator on the planet, MAGA, the political movement with the most momentum, that is capable of hiring intelligent lawyers that are capable of fighting these things out, how come they weren't able to fight these things? And the only answer is because they didn't have a good case to begin with. They had a shitty case to begin with. And let's go ahead and make the argument that the entire justice system is just against MAGA and Trump. The entire system just hates Trump. It's improper. They aborted the arguments before they even got to the thing. Then prove it outside of court. Prove it outside of court. I would listen. I am an intellectually curious person who enjoys understanding the facts of the matter. So if you said, well, the courts weren't willing to listen to our arguments, but we have a robust case showing outcome determinative voter fraud. Show us the evidence. I would love to see the evidence. Please show me the evidence.
That was made public. We know that for a lot of this, it was a blatant lie. So
Fast and Bulba says, you're saying he should be more in the nitty gritty committee instead of the itty bitty titty committee. Yes, that's exactly what I said.
For instance, when we watch Trump's lawyers show and we watch Trump talk about the hidden boxes and that in the State Farm arena that were pulled out from under the table and put back and we don't know where they came from, we do know where they came from. And you can tell because if you watch the full 6-hour video where she's giving a presentation to the state election board or state legislature or whatever, you can see her fast forward 10 minutes where they were counting, they finished counting for the night, they take the boxes, put them on the floor, slide them under. 10 minutes later, they get a call saying, actually, we're going to resume counting because we want to get these results out faster.
I think we have a Destiny critic in chat says, did Destiny ever affirm he has given BJs to other men, or is that fake? No. Destiny's bisexual, and he has engaged in filleting males, which, not my cup of tea. I'll put it that way. But I don't think that has anything to do with the veracity of his arguments. So, we're watching Destiny debate a public intellectual about Trump, And, once again, like Destiny's personal life, not my cup of tea. Destiny's debate style. Dinesh better come prepared, because if Dinesh just has talking points after that, he's going to get graped.
Take the same boxes out, they put them on the table. Not only was that a complete and total
Oh no, a penis liking man. Yes, it's scary. Why would you like a penis? It's like a bag of quarters. Or wait, what? It's like a roll of quarters.
bold-faced lie when it was first presented in court or presented to the public. It was a lie that Trump repeated up to and including his speech on January 6th, where he encouraged his followers to go and riot at the Capitol to try to delay the outcome of the election. So every single case has been some variation of them not knowing if a law was broken. You can listen to hours and hours of deposition. You can read the subpoenas. You can read the judge's decisions. There's a reason why you guys will say, well, all of them were thrown out. None was adjudicated on the merits. Trump was president for 4 years. He had Barr look into all of these claims. Barr said that all of them were BS. Trump is president now. He has the ability to go back and look at stuff. Nothing has been dug up. In fact, the first time Trump was president, when he also made claims that the election was rigged, he put together an election board to look at if there was any impropriety or fraud that happened in any of the states, and they found nothing. They disbanded it in like a year. For the final point, you bring this point up that wow, it's crazy that they say this was the safest election ever because there hasn't been a comparative analysis on fraud. I think the point of the statement was to say that there were more people, more cameras, more systems that were looking at this election than in any prior election. And I would argue that just like how Doge went through the entire government and massively failed at discovering any waste, fraud, or abuse, Donald Trump and all of his cronies have been looking at so much election-related stuff, and
Listen, guys, I'm trying to find a new balance in engaging with chat versus letting the content flow. That way, VOD viewers are not subject to my autism and ADHD. But you guys are wild. So for instance, Velrunner says, "Oh no, a penis-liking man." CD Sockdem says, "That's not Destiny criticism. That's just homophobia." Then you guys bring up the 2 weeks memes in reference to Donald Trump just being willing to, sorry, Donald Trump coming out with the outcome determinative voter fraud evidence in just another 2 weeks. But the God of Crack says, "Mine is a roll of dimes." 2Hinge says, "I mean, sausages do be tasty sometimes." And then Fast and Bulba says, "Like I said, some people like to eat the corn the long way." Oh, absolute savages in my chat. Absolute savages.
only fraud, weird stuff we've seen has come from the Republican side. Tina Peters being a great example of that. Trump trying to steal the election with his false elector slates being another great example of that.
All right. So
let's get into the nitty gritty, Dinesh. Let's go.
So let me offer a couple thoughts. Number one, if you're right that a bungled legal effort failed on account of the incompetence of the people who tried to prove the fraud, I would argue by the same token that the Democratic goofballs who launched 90+ charges against Trump in...
Wait, hold on. So M3.59s says, "It's impossible to know that he sucks and takes him seriously. It's very hard." I mean, penis jokes aside, like, yeah, sure. I agree that when you hear about Steven's personal life and the way that he conducts his personal life, it's difficult to be like, how is he such a good debater, arguer, intellect person, really smart sentence there, Connor. Intellectual, how is he so talented in these areas of his life and yet his personal life is so disastrous? And so I agree. There's kind of like a little bit of cognitive dissonance there where it's just like, damn, like, he's so talented in these arenas. How come he's not talented in these other arenas? But I oftentimes think that, like really, really, really talented people, they oftentimes have an area of their life where they're just like totally a fucking mess. And so as a result, I'm willing to give a little bit of latitude, I suppose, for the way that he conducts his personal life in reference to, the talent, I suppose. But what I would do, let's say that you're a Destiny critic and you do not like his personal life. You think it bleeds over into some of the bad takes he has, which does happen sometimes. and then all that kind of stuff. Then I would just evaluate each claim individually. Because right now we're taking a look at this debate, and Destiny has brought up, like, I would say 3 or 4 pretty good arguments, which is effectively, aren't you guys friends in IRL? Yeah, I would say so. That doesn't mean that he's above personal criticism. And what I would say, though, is that, like, if you are Dinesh D'Souza, then you need to come up with counter arguments for why Destiny is incorrect. Because Destiny brought up the fact that Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump claimed that these votes were brought in and they're not accounted for, this, that, the other. And then Stephen has said, that's factually untrue. We know through the investigations and the legal process that we know where these votes came from. They are accounted for. So that's a hole in the MAGA argument. Then when it comes to outcome determinative voter fraud, you've had the capacity to investigate these things, and the states have investigated it. They didn't find anything improper that they made publicly available. So that seems like another hole in the argument. And then number 2, Donald Trump's been in the federal government for the past year, didn't seem to make outcome determinative voter fraud a priority this past year. And then now he's promising in 2 months, we're gonna prove the outcome determinative voter fraud. But I think they've been promising this since like 2021. I remember Sidney Powell. I remember the Kraken. I remember Tina Peters saying that she got because Tina Peters is from Colorado, right? They got a USB thumb drive of a copy of the data from Colorado that proved that Dominion was manipulating the voter rolls in order to give Biden's hundreds of thousands or millions of improperly counted votes. And Dominion is a nationwide brand. And what ended up happening since that time? Fox News had, not only did we find text messages from Tucker Carlson saying that they thought the story was bullshit, but then Fox News had to pay Dominion $750 billion for defamation. So that's my thing. Once again, if you're going to make these claims, if you're going to allude to these situations, you can't just come with like illusions. You need to come with evidence, and your evidence needs to stand up to scrutiny. And that's where, if Dinesh is just going to come with talking points and illusions, he's going to get F'd in the A. Yeah, don't forget Mike Lindell. Yeah, Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, 750 million. Did I say billion? My apologies. Million, yes. But Mike Lindell is a former crackhead who made My Pillow, became a millionaire. I don't know how much, I don't know what his net worth is, became a Trump sycophant and a public talking piece, but he effectively has schizophrenia. So once again, like, where's the evidence? You cannot just allude to the evidence. You have to present the evidence, and the evidence has to stand up to scrutiny. Otherwise, you're a liar. And that's where it feels like Dinesh is getting stomped out, because so far he hasn't gotten into the nitty gritty.
Multiple jurisdictions were equally
Exactly, Fast and Bulbous. He needs counterpoints, not talking points. But exactly.
dumb because they made claims that they were unable to sustain. The cases were thrown out, made moot, exposed to the public for their prima facie idiocy, or they capsized of their own weight. They were withdrawn. Fannie Willis was basically had her own problems and had to withdraw. The successors basically decided that's the end of that. So what I'm getting at is, either we rely on the legal process as a pretty fair adjudicator of these kinds of claims, in which case you got to grant that the case against Trump ended up, think of it, you didn't have one shot. You had like 7 shots at this guy. You failed on all of them. Even in the one place where you, quote, got him on the ultimate bogus case, which was in New York, the judge himself was too timid to impose a verdict and basically says, Mr. Trump, you can go. I wish you well. Even the judge knew that he was part of a political game and he had to fess up, because if he was really enforcing the law, think of it, if you or I were found guilty of 34 felonies, the judge would have said, I'm imposing a sentence. My sentence might be overturned or maybe held to be invalid, but this man has broken the law 34 times. In fact, think of the stupidity. This was
once again, I hope Destiny grapes him on the details. So the I don't care about the New York case, because the New York case, I think that what MAGA and Trump argues is probably true. That were Donald Trump not the president of the United States who had tried to overthrow the election in January 6, 2021, I don't know if the New York case would have been brought. So the New York case, as far as I understand it, is that Donald Trump lied on 34 separate business transactions and signed off on those business transactions. Those business transactions were in service of getting his lawyer to buy the Stormy Daniels story in order to cover it up before the election and buy it from a tabloid and then reimburse the lawyer through the campaign, which is improper, like, campaign funds. It's fraudulent business transactions. And then not just that, it's in service to a campaign. Okay. And so in service to a campaign is an enhancement in New York, where if you commit a crime in order to further a campaign, then it becomes a felony. And so as a result of doing fraudulent business transactions, which I think is a misdemeanor, enhancing it to a felony, that extended the statute of limitations, and then that allowed the state of New York to charge him and convict him with the 34 felony counts. And then as a result, it did become a Democratic talking point that Trump is a convicted felon guilty of 34 separate felonies, even though it was all related to the same case. And what was the other one that he did? Oh, and that he was found civilly liable for grabbing someone by the wussy in reference to the civil suit. And so once again, like, I'm telling you, in 1998, if I told my parents that the front runner for the Republican Party was somebody who was civilly found to have assaulted a woman by grabbing their vagina without their consent and digitally penetrating them, and then also they had 34 felony counts of fraudulent business transactions, and they had an affair with a pornographic actress while their wife was pregnant, and they had talked shit about a war veteran and said that, John McCain isn't his hero because he prefers that his heroes hadn't been captured. My parents would have thrown up blood, right? They would have thrown up blood. There's no way in hell my parents from 1993 or 1998 would have voted for Donald Trump. And yet, I don't think that my dad did vote for Donald Trump in 2024. I think he might have voted for him in 2016 as a fuck you. And I think my mom voted for Donald Trump in 2016 because she wanted Roe versus Wade overturned. But the Republican Party has fallen, man. It's just fallen so fucking bad. And Dinesh D'Souza is a part of the snake oil salesmen that are profiting from the fall of the Republican Party. And I'm not going to lie, it's fucking embarrassing. It's embarrassing that the Republican Party has fallen this far. All right. Anyways, just checking out what I've written so far. Valid aspirations for America. America should be economically prosperous through the vehicle of free market. Economic dynamism is an important part of American life. Americans should be secured in a society that values law and order. Immigrants need to be vetted and law-abiding before they're integrated into our society. I think those were like the main points brought up by Dinesh. I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half, and then I'm going to bring up how the Democratic Party allegedly does not fulfill this promise, and that's why people might vote for Republicans, because Republicans at least talk about these things. But then I think that you and I, my lovely chat, you and I can agree that Donald Trump is the least likely to deliver on these stated principled goals. Quick show, like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. Thank you to Charlie November for the gifted membership, Grassroots, Hegemon, Fell Runner, and Patriarch for the other super chats. We do have roughly 150 people here. Thank you for being here. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them. Let's go.
It's 34 different checks, so apparently it's 34 different felonies. The lawfare of it couldn't be more obvious or blatant. Now,
also, notice how we've jumped too. Sorry, real quick. This is worth pointing out. We've jumped from the Mar-a-Lago hidden documents, the veracity of the 2020 election, to now Donald Trump's alleged criminality and we've dug into none of these topics. So once again, you need talking points, not counterpoints. Thank you, Fast and Bulbous. But
Why did the
Hey,
jury
hold on,
convict
hold on,
him?
let me-
Well, why
let
did
me-
the jury
let me
convict
finish.
him in New York?
What's that?
Why did the jury convict him if it was just lawfare?
Because a jury in New York, like a jury in DC, is going to be. Well, all right.
Aren't you saying then that half the country is living in delusion if you can't even trust a jury of every single person, that a single person could say, I don't agree with the verdict here?
You think the OJ jury got it right?
The OJ, that's a totally different case with
Well, I mean, if
factual
you trust
accounting.
the jury, then they got it right.
I can say that juries
Don't
might.
you agree?
I can say, wait. I can disagree with juries sometimes. You just said that there are two sections of the United States, in New York and DC, and I'm willing to bet you'd say other states where there is no jury that could hear. Well, I'm curious, actually. Fine, there are things in the OJ case that I think it seems like he was clearly guilty of something. What law in New York State that he was convicted of breaking, that he received almost 34 felony counts for, do you think he didn't actually break? Did he not lie when he paid his lawyer Cohen a fee that was actually just a money transfer to Stormy Daniels, and then commit a bookkeeping fraud on the furtherance of that lie, which is why the misdemeanor was upgraded to a felony? Do you think that's not true?
One of the problems with living in this kind of society today, and one of the essential.
are you going to answer that question? Oh, no.
Defining elements of lawfare is simply to ask this question. If anybody else did that, or if Trump himself did it, but was not running for president, would these charges have been brought? And again, we're all watching this. We're not on the jury. We're watching this as
Oh. I hope Destiny presses him, because once again, I don't care about the New York case, because I do think that just a matter of like prosecutorial prioritization, I don't think this would have been brought like the misdemeanors of false business transactions. I don't think it would be brought about Donald Trump, or brought against Donald Trump, if he was just a private citizen. But at the same time, that's not what Stephen asked. Stephen asked, as a fact of the matter, did Donald Trump commit a crime? And this is also the way that I talk about the Ethan Klein lawsuit. So I don't think suing poor people in order to get them into the poorhouse as a bullying tactic because they don't like the fact that they've talked shit about you on the internet is a good thing. So while I'm sympathetic to Ethan Klein getting harassed for the past 3 years for allegedly being like a Zionist genocidal murderer, and I'm sympathetic to the fact that Casey Tron Denims, Frogan, and Hassan Piker have been talking crazy shit about him, I do not support Ethan Klein suing Casey Tron and Frogan into the poorhouse, even though it's funny. I don't support it. I think it's funny. But then there's an underlying fact of the matter. Did they commit copyright infringement that made them legalistically vulnerable? And the answer is yes. So Dinesh not answering whether or not Trump committed the underlying crime, I really hope Stephen presses him on it. I really do.
Spectators from the outside, we've got to use a certain rule of common sense. You have this guy Trump. He's in the thick of New York real estate. He's in the thick of all these claims of bombastic claims by Mar-a-Lago's worth X. This is worth Y. My assets are worth this. Everybody does this. Now, if all of this was so fraudulent, how does the man go 75 years of his life without a single charge? Then, interestingly, he entered.
That's not even true, though, because I'm pretty sure that if we looked at like the accusations of fraud that Donald Trump has made, or excuse me, that other people have made against Donald Trump, he stiffed Harrah's with the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. He stiffed his contractors. Yes, agonized. He's had 4,000 plus civil cases before he was president where he screwed over his business partners. Trump University. Yes, dude. Like that's, so you're lying or you're just a talking points machine. And by the way, this hits hard if you're an idiot.
Politics as a Republican, 93 charges are dropped on his head. Now, if you genuinely think, and look, we could very well in this audience be exploring the delusions we're talking about. If you genuinely genuinely are a smart guy and you think, I think that's right. The guy was squeaky clean for 75 years. Then he became a habitual criminal and committed 93 offenses.
No, dude, nobody who pays attention to any, this hits hard if you're a dumbass.
Warranting the guy being jailed for life, a guy who just happens to have been the president of the United States and on the verge of being reelected a second time, but you don't have to worry about that if you can put him away. And this doesn't raise any issues of political targeting, Stalinism, find me the man and I'll find you the crime. If you genuinely don't think any of that is at issue, then we are at a little bit of an intellectual breakdown here.
So this isn't an intellectual breakdown. This is a bad conversation about politics with your family at Thanksgiving. There has to be a better factual analysis than, isn't it weird? Isn't it weird that, so the 34 felonies that he was...
Oh no, guys, this is terrible. I think Dinesh did not get ready for this.
Charged with and convicted of in New York State. He did those. For the Mar-a-Lago documents case, this is the thing. He couldn't have possibly been charged with a crime like this before having a security clearance or being in a job with security clearance because he wouldn't have had access to these documents. So for the Mar-a-Lago case, he took classified material from the White House, stored it in an area where classified material is now to be kept.
Yep.
He showed other people some of that classified material. And then he resisted efforts from NARA and the FBI to retrieve said material, and he was directing his employees to hide it and lie to the FBI when they were requesting information about this material. This is incredible.
Oh, Mill says, please debate Jesse not on fire again. That was beyond entertaining. Jesse has below basic human intelligence. Was that the MMA guy? Was that like I don't remember if he's bald, but was that like the ginger MMA guy? Because I actually think the ginger MMA guy that I debated on, I think it was Raging Tomato, I think he was actually trying and he was honest with himself. I think he just didn't understand anything. I've needed to DM Raging Tomato. I need to DM her. I'll DM her now and say like, hey, I'm put me in, coach.
Part of that is true and all the rest of it is not true.
Which part of it was not true?
The first part of it, that he took the documents, is true. The second question is, how does a president who takes his own documents, which he has the plenary power to declassify, how does he prima facie violate the law, especially when you consider that pretty much every other president, going back to Nixon, had documents. Mike had documents.
Because he took those documents and then left office and then retained the documents after he no longer had the plenary power in order to declassify them. As a matter of fact, that is one of the things that happened on that Donald Trump allegedly mentioned during a meeting that set off alarm bells.
Biden had documents in his garage, including a bunch sitting in his car. These documents were fully exposed. There were documents at the Penn Biden Center, accessible to everyone. And yet the guy who looks into it goes, I don't think we should charge this guy because he's kind of forgetful and he won't really withstand trial because he tends not to remember things. I mean, since when does somebody get a pass from a serious offense because they don't have a very good memory of the stuff that they manifestly did? So when you suddenly develop this kind of selective aggression, Trump has done all these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you conveniently forget that presidents have routinely taken their own stuff. Then again, I have to say that this looks to me quite clearly a case of isolating Trump. I mean, the way we know.
Well, here, real quick, just on this, because you laid out some facts and the factual.
You said he obstructed.
Well, wait, real quick. So you say these words, prima facie. Prima facie means has the person who is under the jurisdiction of some place, has he met the prerequisite elements to have committed the crime? So the crime of retention of classified materials requires intent. So one funny thing that conservatives like to do is they like to say that, well, Herr said that Biden was forgetful and he wouldn't be able to stand trial because of his forgetfulness. That's not true. What Herr was speaking to when he was speaking of Biden's state of mind was that he probably forgot that he had these documents here or that he was storing these things. The crime that speaks, the federal statutes that talk about the retention of classified material that makes it a crime is knowing that you actually have them. That's why when Biden contacted the FBI and said, hey, we have classified documents here. We think you guys should come and grab them. They weren't convicted or charged with any crimes because it seems like they weren't trying to intentionally store classified material, as opposed to Donald Trump, who was showing documents to people. And you say, well, they were his, right? Why did he say twice, I could have unclassified these, or I could have declassified these, but I didn't?
Stephen having commands of the actual narrative is actually owning Dinesh D'Souza right now. Gosh, this is kind of brutal, guys. Is this, I don't know. Like, I'll keep watching it as long as you guys want me to watch it, but like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. This is kind of brutal. This is kind of like watching, I hate to say it, it is like watching a boxing match and having a guy taking the boxing match super seriously and doing the jump rope and building up his cardio and working on his footwork and, you know, hitting the bag and doing this, that, the other and getting ready for it. And then another guy, because he assumes, because he beats up middle school children every day. He beats up mentally disabled people in parking lots. He doesn't do any cardio. He doesn't work on his footwork. He doesn't work on anything. And then he just shows up. And then the actually trained boxer just starts whipping the shit out of another guy. It's kind of like it is. That's how I'm feeling about it. It's kind of rough. I mean, I'll keep watching it. We got 150 people, you know, grassroots hegemon already oiled. So, you know, I'm happy to be here. I'll sit here as long as you guys want me to, and I'll try to extract some actual points of contention here. But I'm not going to lie. It is kind of like watching a fat guy show up to a boxing match unprepared and then just getting his teeth punched in. It's pretty bad. Nervin says, Counterpoints Politics, my first YouTube membership, not a conservative myself, but I have family that are good people and fell for MAGA. Still believe in a united future with sanity on both sides. Keep it up. Thank you, Nervin. I appreciate the kind comment. And thank you for your membership.
And also, as a second quick thing, the president does not have plenary authority for declassification of everything, especially when it comes to the Department of Energy, which has nuclear secrets, especially when you're talking about TSSCI, SAP, separate access programs or special access programs.
Uh-oh, Stephen read stuff.
That are part of our nuclear secrets that Donald Trump was keeping at Mar-a-Lago. So even that he couldn't have declassified on his own.
Here's the problem.
Here's the problem. That is devastating to my case. Listen, guys, you guys have seen Liar Liar, right? And if you haven't, I need to introduce you. This was Jim Carrey at his peak. All right, I'm gonna show you this. Objection. On what grounds? This is devastating to my case. Objection. This is devastating to my case. All right. Hold on.
I surveilled Mrs. Cole at the behest.
I need better audio. Otherwise, I need to boost.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Overruled.
Good.
Listen, man, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen to whatever Dinesh says, but this is brutal. Okay. Yeah, I've had better. Dude, if you're an old gun, you've probably already watched this. You need to watch it again. It's a classic, you know, Jim Carrey movie. It's Jim Carrey at his peak. If you are a young gun and you've never seen this film, you have to watch it. It's Jim Carrey has a kid. He's divorced. He's a lying, philandering, manipulative, illegal parking, narcissistic lawyer. His kid wishes that he can't lie for a full day. And then magic happens, and then he can't lie for a full day. And as a result, his entire life falls apart in the funniest way possible that ultimately makes him a better human being. And so yeah, you need to watch it. But I'm gonna watch this clip one more time because honestly, I kind of feel like this is exactly what bringing up TSSCI, bringing up the fact that he does not have unilateral authority to declassify nuclear secrets, that he mentioned on audio tape that he had the authority, past tense, to declassify certain documents, but he had not done so. And therefore, he should not be showing the person at the dinner party what he's showing them. Like this is what this is what Dinesh D'Souza just did right in front of our eyeballs.
Oh my. Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Overruled.
Good call!
Brutal.
I mean, had this case proceeded all the way, and these elements of the crime that you're describing.
Thank you, Michael Hatchtube, for the 10. I shouted, "Quit breaking the law, asshole," at the 34 counts part of the debate at least twice. Brilliant. Great minds think alike, Michael Hatch. Great minds think alike.
Been proven. We could then debate what was going on. I'll give you the Trump side of it. I took these documents. I was contacted by the National Archives, NARA, I guess it's called, about the fact you need to give some of these documents back. What does some mean here? Trump is like, some of them may be mine, some of them I may have to return. And so a process now begins of bargaining.
Well, before you do, Theophrastus, gonna watch Liar Liar right now. This debate, quote unquote, is too painful. Hey, listen, I'm with you, but the psychic damage is too great. We got 150 people watching this quote unquote debate. So apparently they're really much enjoying the psychic damage. This is the closest thing to a substantive idea that we've withdrawn from this debate so far, is that there are genuine things that motivate the MAGA movement. And I think that Dinesh D'Souza articulated the following. America should be economically prosperous through the vehicle of the free market. Okay. Economic dynamism is an important part of American life. Americans should be secured in a society that values law and order. Immigrants need to be vetted and be law-abiding before they're integrated into our society. These are statements about what the United States should aspire to be. And this is something that MAGA talks about all the time as principles that they're pursuing. Now, the argument from the Republicans is that Democrats drag down the economy through high taxation and high welfare spending, that Democrats destroy economic dynamism through neoliberal gutting of manufacturing and sending jobs overseas. Now, 30, 40 years ago, Republicans thought that that was based. They thought that offshoring everything in order to make more money was amazing. But now that, it's kind of screwed over the economic populist voting base, they have to make signals about how neoliberal international economics is actually bad and tariffs are based. So the party flip as far as economic populism has happened in the MAGA movement. Democrats destroy law and order through the decriminalization of petty theft, misdemeanors, no cash bail, and lax drug laws. And then Democrats allow unvetted immigrants through a porous border and perverse asylum release process, where effectively you can come show up to the United States, apply for asylum, and then while your case is pending, you're just released into the United States. And this has added millions of non-citizens to the United States of America's population. Now, I think I could rant for another 5 to 10 minutes about how Donald Trump makes all of these things worse through incompetence and stupidity. But I at least want to show you that there are valid goals of the right wing and there's valid criticisms of the Democratic Party. The problem is that the right wing under Trump is arguably worse for all these policies than the Democrats right now. Conservative says offshoring was always bad. The Republican Party is a swinging pendulum that can't find a sensible center. Well, that's because we went from neoconservatives who thought that offshoring was based and that American military interventionism was based to paleocon national conservative isolationists who are pro-tariff and pro-market interventionism. So yeah. Bud123 says, I went to the gym yesterday to do leg day. It's hard to do deadlifts at Planet Fitness on the Smith machine. I will do upper today, chest, back, triceps, biceps, and shoulders since I am not going tomorrow. I did do legs yesterday. I have not done my hamstring curls yet, but I need to. Yeah. Input output says offshoring moved the ecological and slave labor aspects out of our nation too. True. And it made it less visible. So if there's a bunch of like Vietnamese slave laborers manufacturing your sneakers, but you don't see them, do you really care about human rights abuses? So I'll put this as valid MAGA aspirations. G-bus Christ. I'll create a new drawing. I'm looking for my mouse right now, and we'll get back into it.
Back and forth. At one point, the FBI comes to Mar-a-Lago. Remember, Mar-a-Lago is a protected facility. Comes to Mar-a-Lago and puts a padlock on the storage facility where the documents are held. So what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with a president who finishes his term. People come into the White House, clear all the stuff out. Where are they going to move it?
This doesn't apply to the nuclear secret stuff at all. So he's avoiding the argument once again.
They move it, not surprisingly, to the residence, Mar-a-Lago. And then begins this process of negotiating over these documents. If you're saying based upon the fact that you think that laws were broken, I would say, what? Because Destiny thinks that the president broke the law, we should lock him up? No. If you can show me a legal process where these elements of the crime were proven, we could look at it.
Well,
But
there is. That's what an indictment is showing these are the laws that we're saying that he broke. This is the evidence
I
we're
read the
presenting to the grand
indictment.
jury. Okay, well, then you know that the grand jury returned an okay to charge Donald Trump with these crimes.
Okay.
Also, you said that Mar-a-Lago was secured, not secured for the storage of classified information. And if Donald Trump truly had nothing to hide and he was cooperating and returning things as he should, why was he having his employee hide boxes from his own lawyers so that they would not be fully truthful, not of their own fault, but because they had no idea when they were communicating with the FBI about documents that Trump was retaining and that he was having brought to his room, going over, taking some back, keeping others, and then telling Nauta, his employee, to lie to the lawyers about what they were hiding.
Whenever you
Listen, objection. That is devastating to my case, and I will not engage with the fact of the matter. Instead, what I will do is I will do a broad appeal to the entirety of the situation, hoping that you forget that Destiny brought up a fact of the matter that I should contend with.
you have an indictment, the prosecution, in this case, it was the
Guys, do you care if I'm going to, you know what? I don't even care if you care. I'm going to fast forward 30 minutes because we've seen the pattern of behavior of what's happening here. Dinesh, Destiny brings up a point and is trying to hold Dinesh to account in order to answer the specifics of a point. Dinesh, instead of answering the question, avoids the question specifically, dances around it with talking points related to the topic. That way it feels like he's on topic. But if you have greater than 80 IQ, you'll notice that he's avoiding the question. And then Destiny brings up another thing, which, by the way, Fellow Runner says, watch Destiny versus Hijab. What did I put in the title? I don't want to kill my audience with Destiny today. No. We will do Destiny versus Muhammad Hijab, but we're not going to do Destiny versus Muhammad Hijab immediately after this. I need a palate cleanser from my palate cleanser. Okay. But anyways, the point is that Dinesh D'Souza dances away while vaguely gesturing at the topic. And then if you have 80 IQ, then you're like, oh, wow, Dinesh really knows what he's talking about because he spoke about it extemporaneously for 3 to 5 minutes while he actually avoids the thrust of Destiny's statement or criticism. So I thought ignoring the facts and attacking the general vibes is why everybody loved Hutch. Fuck you on Hutch's behalf. So yeah, all the while accusing Destiny of not sticking to the topic. Dinesh is not he's not stuck to a topic yet. Every time that Destiny brings up a fact of the matter, Dinesh D'Souza dances away from it. Michael Hatch says, I need to find a way to bottle your brevity, Counterpoints. Thank you. I don't know if you're saying that I'm not brief because I'm not known for my brevity. It'll be a big bottle, says Send Patriarch. Somebody twist Send Patriarch's balls. Oh my God, you guys are brutal. But thank you, Michael Hatch, for the 2 super chats. Thank you, Charlie November, for the membership. Thank you, Grassroots, for the oil. Thank you to Fell Runner for the super chat. Thank you to Patriarch for the membership. All right. Okay, chat. Stop, mods. Stop twisting Send Patriarch's balls. He learned his lesson. All right, I fast forwarded 30 minutes. Let's see if there's any other interesting talking points that we get into, or let's see if the pattern repeats itself.
5 different homes, and you find 5 dead bodies in those homes. His cell phone places him at those homes at those exact times of those 5
Ooh, dead bodies and cell phone signals. Let's see what it is.
murders. However, only one of those homes has surveillance. And in that one case, you can look at the cell phone data. You can see when he entered the home. You can then compare it against the surveillance video, but you only have one video. Now, in the 2020 election, even in the places that had surveillance, they had surveillance in approximately 1 out of 10 or fewer drop boxes. So the truth of it is, you could have a cell phone moving from Dropbox to Dropbox, but only one of those Dropboxes has surveillance.
I think
So
I would say the analogy
this
is
was all
very
described. The analogy, this is all.
the analogy is telling because you're saying there's 5 murders, but you don't even have any proof of malfeasance happening at any of these ballot boxes. Also, when you say there's not surveillance on them, you keep saying that like that's exceptional. Surveillance wouldn't even really tell you anything, right? A guy could show up in a hooded mask with everything covered, and there's nothing illegal about that, and drop a ballot off, and you would know nothing about this person. How would surveillance even help in this case?
Well, it would help to establish that the cell phone, because the problem with the cell phone is my cell phone is moving from box to box to box. If I gave my cell phone to my wife, then she could be going from box to box, but it would be with my cell phone. The advantage of the surveillance, it can establish who is the guy who is showing up at the box. Now, look, here's the problem, okay? When you do cell phone geo-tracking, you get a cell phone ID. But the cell phone ID is not the phone number. And we have no ability, and neither do you, to take a cell phone ID and identify the person associated with that cell phone. The only people who can do that is law enforcement. And so we asked Democratic officials in Georgia, in Arizona, in Milwaukee, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, to look into this. Not surprisingly, the Democrats were like, nah, we're not really interested in doing this. We're like, just talk to the mules. Maybe there is a very plausible explanation. This guy just happens to take a really long walk around election time. He likes to stop at drop boxes. He smokes a cigarette at each drop box, and that explains why he's pausing at these drop boxes. So maybe there is an explanation. We'd like to know what it is. The movie can take you as far as a film can go, but to now demand, why didn't you do the investigation? We're not able to do that, and we said so in the film. So what I'm getting at is, this is not a case where there's nothing here. There is a lot here.
There's literally, how could you even get that information?
Well, the answer is the cell phone date. You just take the cell phone data. You have a list of 2,000 or more cell phone IDs. You just get the actual phone numbers of everybody. You go visit.
No, I'm asking, how would you get the phone numbers? How would you translate this from ID to phone number to person?
That can be done very easily. That's done in every burglary and murder case in the country right now.
The burglaries have something called probable cause of a crime being committed. There's no world where law enforcement could start pulling phone numbers and data from phones off of a wild hunch where no other information is shown. Probable cause meaning that it's likely that a crime has been committed here. There's no world where a judge should be signing off on warrants or subpoenas pulling information like that.
Wrong. If you live in China. Listen, man, this shows you like the exact vapidness, the vapidness of the MAGA movement, where Dinesh D'Souza says, oh, well, we have this cell phone signal that gets close to half a dozen drop boxes over the course of the day. Okay. And show us the show us the improperly filled out ballots. Show us how it's outcome determinative. Show us fucking anything. And instead, what they're saying is like, oh well, the cell phone signal went around drop boxes multiple times per day. So as a result, that's indications that they turned in they turned in ballot stuffing, basically. And by the way, there is, in some states, there are laws against ballot harvesting. And in some states, ballot harvesting is just viewed as unethical. And so ballot harvesting, as I understand it, and chat can correct me if I'm wrong, is where you go into a place like a nursing home where people are unlikely to vote. And then you guide those people through filling out their ballot, which I don't think you're really supposed to do. People are supposed to fill out their own ballots of their own volition without being guided by anybody, unless they're being guided by like a poll member who is specifically not biased. And then what you can do is you can take all the ballots from that place, like a nursing home, and you could turn it in as a mail-in ballot on the behalf of the people who voted. And so the reason why people view this as unethical, and in some places it's illegal, is because they believe the people who are harvesting ballots are doing so improperly. They're oftentimes politically motivated. They have a favorite candidate. They're going to inform the people, like nursing home octogenarians, how they should fill out their ballots in order to get the electoral outcome that they want. But at the same time, we don't have enough evidence to say, this lady on this date went to this location in order to ballot harvest. While there, she specifically directed everybody there to vote the way that she wanted to, and then she turned them in en masse. Okay? And in some states, it's not even illegal. And in some states, it's just viewed as unethical. And even in the states where it's illegal, you would have to prove that this thing happened. So where is that? The closest thing that I've seen to that, I think, is in Minnesota. I think it was in Dearborn. In Dearborn, allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly, there was films of people going through apartment complexes ballot harvesting. But once again, that's not what the Dinesh D'Souza is accusing Democrats of. They're not accusing Dearborn, Michigan. My apologies. But they're not accusing of random ballot harvesting. They're accusing them of outcome determinative voter fraud to the tunes of millions of votes. So, yeah, that's kind of frustrating. Quick shout out to our sponsors so far. We have 170 people in chat. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. Michael Hatch gave us 2 super chats. Thank you, King. Charlie November gifted a membership. Grassroots with a generous $50 super chat. Fell Runner with a super chat, and Patriarch with a membership. Thank you for being here. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them. I appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out. I'm going to keep drawing momentarily.
So this is a good question. You're saying that if the prosecutor, let's just say in Fulton County, were to go to a judge and say, we have identified in Fulton County 242 individuals who in the period leading up to the 2020 election or the recall election have been identified as going directly to 10 or more drop boxes. By the way a cell phone moves is it doesn't move in a fluid pattern. It moves and stops and moves again and stops. You can actually tell when the phone paused. So we're talking about people who are stopping at the drop box. And if you go to a judge and say, we need a warrant to be able to identify these people and merely verify from them that their behavior was lawful. According to you, that warrant would be impossible to obtain because there's no probable cause. Knowing something about the law myself, I would say that warrant would be extremely easy to obtain.
What you described isn't even an illegal activity.
The
Grassroots with a super generous $50 super chat. Hobbs saw an oncologist today. His situation is horrifically severe, but they have an approximately 80% success rate with injectable chemotherapy. So I'm going to try it as long as he can still run and play. It may buy him a year or two. For those of you who don't know, we are an intimate community. We like talking to each other about our lives and all that kind of stuff. Grassroots is one of our Oilers, and I would say a friend of the channel. And Hobbs is his German Shepherd, who I think he said was 8 years old, maybe a little bit older, I forget. But he's a German Shepherd, and he does have lymphoma. So it sucks to hear it, but I know that, number one, Grassroots will try to take care of him as maximally as possible. Number two, if it does go for the worst, then he's going to eat delicious food and go outside and chill as much as possible. So thank you for intimate community. Don't make it sound gay. You guys are pretty gay. Listen, no offense, guys. I don't have to make you sound that gay. You guys are pretty gay. But if you're a dog lover, if you're a friend of the channel, et cetera, then, you know, just leave a little bit of love for Mr. Grassroots. And yeah, you guys are gay.
Election fraud is illegal. The question
No,
is,
you don't have any evidence of election fraud. You have evidence of
Right. Let's actually take a look at ballot harvesting real quick. I'm going to Google this while we're paying attention. Is ballot harvesting illegal in Georgia? We're going to do that momentarily.
people walking near drop
all
boxes,
right.
which also are near post offices, which could be people mailing any number of things, right?
Let me pose a case to you. These 4 kids in Idaho are found dead. And this guy, Koberger, you see his cell phone in the vicinity of the houses, and he makes a big circle around the house, and that's the geo-tracking. He was there at the time or around the time that crime was committed. Are you saying that a single judge would go, we don't even have any evidence he did it?
No, I think you would have. I think that would be good for probable cause that a crime was committed because we have 4 dead bodies. It's likely a crime committed there.
That's right.
We have no evidence of voter fraud from any of these mailing boxes, so there is no probable cause to speak of. Again, you don't even have evidence of a crime.
Right, but when an investigation is underway, judges are very willing to give law enforcement the tools to discover if a crime has been committed. I'll give you my own case, a very good example. So in my own case, somebody tipped off the FBI that I made this contribution. The contribution could have been legal.
No, it couldn't have been, right?
Why? Why not?
Because it exceeded the federal election commission's.
There are
contribution limits.
actually legal ways to make a contribution. How do you think Soros gives millions of dollars? I just gave the wrong way.
Because Soros doesn't give millions of dollars to candidates or PACs. He gives them to things called super PACs, the hybrid 401 or 403 C5s or whatever, C4s or whatever, like the different organizations there, but not to a candidate directly. You give money to another person and tell them to give money.
Also, we just looked at this. So I Googled, is ballot harvesting illegal in the state of Georgia? And of course, this is a cursory look. So if somebody wants to dig deeper, dig deeper. But in 2023, it found that a law called the Georgia Election Integrity Act was lawful, and it banned ballot harvesting. However, that law was passed in 2021. So it was passed after the election of 2020. So if somebody wants to, go through and take a look and see if ballot harvesting was prohibited in the state of Georgia prior to the 2020 election, I mean, feel free to do so. But this is where, like, Dinesh, once again, by not having a command of the facts, is kind of getting gaped, in my opinion, where it's like, first you have to establish that ballot harvesting is illegal in the state that you care about. Then you have to come up with the evidence for it. And then even, let's say that Dinesh is totally right. Let's say he nailed it. He's the best investigator on the face of the planet, and he found a dozen people who had engaged in illicit ballot harvesting, where they had gone to nursing homes, gotten a bunch of old people to sign their ballots, and then they dropped them off on their behalf in violation of election laws. Number one, you haven't proven that the people who got their ballots harvested didn't vote the way that they voted, but you could say that there was a criminal action here. Number two, you've come nowhere near the threshold to prove outcome determinative voter fraud. This is throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. And frankly, watching Destiny kind of rip through it is cathartic. Michael Hatch, thank you for the super chat again. How could there be so many locations in one vicinity? You said baconity? Listen, I love baconitties too, but I'm assuming you're saying vicinity. Okay, yes, vicinity. Okay, yes. True Seeker says the debate was over when Destiny out-debated him on his own movie. Isn't that kind of brutal? Isn't that kind of brutal? All right, I'm going to let this go for another minute, but I'm not going to lie. I might jump another 30 minutes because bacon titties, let's go. That's what I heard. I might jump another 30 to see if we get into it. I think, okay, so we've established the pattern. We have 170 people hanging out in chat, and apparently they're having a good time. They're having some schadenfreude. We do have a healthy chunk of donations coming in, so I parasocially love you for that. But I know that when I change up content and we're watching something else, I'm going to lose some of you guys, which is totally fine. I don't hate you for it. I only hate you a little bit for it. But the point is that, like, realistically, we know what we got here. Dinesh D'Souza showed up with talking points. Destiny actually did research. Whenever they bring up a specific topic, Dinesh D'Souza is dancing away with talking points. Steven is stomping him, and it's kind of embarrassing if you have an IQ above 80. That's what's happening right now. Christian Blair says Fuentes debated with Spencer recently. Yeah, apparently they talked about, like, they got into a really deep policy conversation, which I think could be interesting. So I kind of wanted to not just make a Destiny simp day. I wanted to mix it up. So we'll see. We'll see.
To a candidate because you know that you would be bypassing the contribution limit. You're never allowed to do that.
All I'm trying to say is that a tip causes the FBI to assign $100,000 to investigate my case. And this is normal. When law enforcement suspects that there's a crime that's been committed, they haven't proven it, they think it might be.
But there's a crime to speak of there. The exceeding of the campaign contribution limits. What you're talking about, dropping ballots off at a drop box,
Can
is
you
not
think
a
of a
crime.
good reason for somebody, let alone 242 people, to go to 10 or more drop boxes?
How many cell phones datas did you go through?
Millions.
So of millions of cell phones, could 243 go by where 10 drop
Not
boxes
go by,
are?
go from one drop box
Go from
to
one
another
drop box to the
and
other?
no
Yeah,
more.
sure.
Look, we're not talking about
240. Do you understand the odds that you're talking about here of millions of cell phones where the post offices are?
And also, by the way, 243. Let's say what number was the popular election? Let's just say it was like 3 million. Okay, 3 million votes. Let's say that was the difference hypothetically in the 2020 election for outcome determinative voter fraud. Okay, let's divide that by 243 cell phones for the amount of ballots that would need to be stuffed by these people. That means that each person, in order to change the outcome of the election, would have to stuff 12,345 ballots by themselves. Okay? Doesn't that kind of seem absurd on its face? It seems absurd to me, but maybe I'm an asshole.
Post drop boxes near these locations. These are all post office drop boxes, right?
Look,
Could I conceive of 240 people out of millions of cell phones dropping off stuff at drop boxes during an election season? Sure, I guess. That's a very low number of people that would have to be out of those millions of phones you pulled.
There is no reason for anyone to go to 2 drop boxes.
No reason at all. You've never in your life gone to 2 drop boxes before.
We're not talking about showing up to City Hall and turning in your ballot. We are talking about these so-called mail-in drop boxes. Look, even if I were taking the ballots of my family members, am I going to say I'll put one ballot in one box and then drive to the next box and a third box, and remember that we're setting a high burden?
Could they just be mailing stuff?
What?
Could they just be dropping off stuff to mail?
You can send in your ballot by the mail.
No, it doesn't have to be a ballot. It could be anything, right?
The mail-in drop boxes are only for ballots. They're not for anything else. They're not intended for the post mail. You're not going to put your utility bill in there. These are drop boxes set up for ballots. And what I'm saying is that it makes sense. All right, maybe by accident you went to 2 boxes, okay? You went to one and put in your ballot. You went to a second and had a smoke. Once you set the bar at 10 drop boxes, you defy credulity. There's no reason to do that. And that's why in itself, it is suspicious behavior. Now, are you saying...
Okay, I don't care. I'm going to fast forward 30 minutes. No offense to Dinesh D'Souza, but he's kind of getting gaped on this.
Ron, will you help me? And I go, well, if you run, I'll try to help you. So this was the basis on which I supported a candidate who had no chance to win, lost by 40 points. I had nothing to get out of it. And so what I'm getting at is we were talking a moment ago about how presidents raise money and are solicitous of people who give them money. And I'm granting that on both parties, this is very common. But that's not the same as Hunter Biden. You jump from Hunter Biden to that. Hunter Biden was basically cashing in big time from a foreign government purporting to supply them with insider information, which is what they were paying for. And we know from his own business partner that money was ending up in the pocket of Joe Biden.
What
I hope, listen. My chat and I viciously disagree on Hunter Biden, okay? The reason why we disagree on Hunter Biden is because I think it's unethical for Hunter Biden to become a lawyer, to become an international consultant for various corrupt energy firms, including a Chinese energy firm and a Ukrainian energy firm, for him to trade on his dad's name, saying that he's going to lobby on these energy firms' behalf in Washington, D.C., call his dad during business meetings as a party trick to show how connected he is with the D.C. establishment, and then make $11 million over the course of a decade and filter that money through. The reason we disagree is because you're wrong. Okay. Fuck you too, patriarch. And then filter that money back through to his family without paying taxes on it. And so as a result, this has resulted in a, I don't know, decade-long investigation. The IRS whistleblower said that the DOJ was playing footsie with Hunter Biden in reference to a plea deal. Merrick Garland ultimately did charge Hunter Biden with tax felonies and misdemeanors. What do you mean back to his family? I mean that he gave gifts of hundreds of thousands of dollars to his sister-in-law, to his minor nephews and nieces, to his uncle who runs a financial investment firm. So anyways, at minimum, Merrick Garland charged him with buying a gun while he was addicted to drugs and then disposing of that gun improperly by just, I think his girlfriend or whatever, or his sister-in-law threw it into a trash can or something like that. I forget the details, but it was kind of stupid. And then also through improperly declaring his taxes, right? Eben says those whistleblowers were desk jockeys who never gotten a prosecutor to sign off on their ideas of what they thought were slam dunks. That's bullshit, Eben. Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Those guys were 20 and 30-year veteran investigators who had worked on like cartel investigations. So don't lie to my face and piss on my leg. It's bullshit. Anyways, all of that to say, now that I have my chat riled up and they're fucking rebelling against me because they endlessly fucking simp for the Biden family, Jared Kushner makes what Hunter Biden did look like small potatoes instantaneously. Okay. Now my chat will come back after their temporary rebellion. Jared Kushner was a temporary appointee of the Trump administration who negotiated the Abraham Accords between Israel and a shitload of Arab nations in order to gain peace. And in compensation for those negotiations, he was given $2 billion, billion with a B, all right, in order to manage a portion of the sovereign wealth fund. The fiery but mostly peaceful chat. Exactly. And so the right there, Jared Kushner, through diplomatic ties through the State Department, will likely die as a not self-made billionaire, but will likely die as a billionaire who made his own money. And so billion with a B, I want you to understand that $11 million goes into $1 billion, what, like 100 times? 1,000 million billion divide by 11,000,000. Jared Kushner with a single deal got 180 times the wealth that or access to 180 times the wealth that Hunter Biden got access to over the course of a decade. Then not only that, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump Jr. have sold out on crypto, where Donald Trump has doubled his net worth over the past year and a half by selling out to crypto bros. And so effectively, I think Donald Trump went from being worth around $4 billion to now like 7 or 8. So once again, the Trump family, and they are like specifically selling access. They are having dinners with the crypto bros who buy more than $1 million worth of crypto. Foreign states are buying crypto and then saying, hey, we bought, $10 million of Trump coin. Can we get a meeting with the president? And so any accusations of grift or corruption or impropriety or unethical behavior that I have for Hunter Biden is 100x, like actually 400x. The Trump administration is more guilty of the same thing that I object to with Hunter Biden. They are 400 times more guilty of the thing I bitch about. And yeah, so I'll leave it there because I really, really, really don't want to fight with my chat about Hunter Biden again. Scott says at least he's doing it out in the open. Just kidding. Thank you. Thank you for saving me from a stroke, Scott. Thank you, Scott, for giving me a stroke and then immediately taking it away. Sacred Snow says, now do the other funny comparison. How much did each of Bonnie Blue's simps pay to participate in the 1,000-man orgy? How much more did Trump's son make than Bonnie Blue? I will not engage with that, or else I might die. Oh my God. Yeah, no, Hedonic Samuel says, I was telling my buddy about the crypto scam the other day, and it's surprising how little folks know about it. Yeah, it's because crypto is weird. It's money that it's like a new currency. It's a new currency that some dickhead on the internet just made up. And if enough people invest into it, it has value. But then most of the time what happens is people rug pull. And so they leave the currency en masse. And so if you time your investment just right, where you start with an investment and then it increases in value, and then you sell the currency at the peak of its value, you can walk away with millions of dollars. But if you're a idiot, not an idiot, idiot's too mean, but if you're a rube, then you can be a part of the rug pull and you can lose thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars instantaneously. It's so weird and ephemeral that a lot of people can't wrap their heads around it because they can't even conceptualize a rug pull. Christian Blair says the internet lies, but supposedly Bonnie Blue is worth $3 to $5 million, and all she had to do was take 3,000 cocks. Let's divide that up for how much each wiener is worth. So let's say 3 million, okay, for a nice even number. 3 million, and let's say Bonnie Blue has done 3,000 manned gangbangs. Now she's of course done more porn than that, but let's just, for the sake of easy numbers, let's divide it by 3,000. That means that for each wiener that Bonnie Blue has allowed inside her body, she made approximately $1,000. So I guess that's a moral horror to me, but go for it. Officer Nasty says, why are we talking about Bonnie Blue? Because there's two topics that trigger me, that my chat triggers me with. It's Bonnie Blue and Hunter Biden. Those are the two things that we consistently fight about the most. Officer Nasty says, I'm confused. I thought Connor didn't care about political figures' immoral shit as long as it doesn't affect their policy. Why does he care about Hunter Biden? I don't know. I don't know if I said I don't care about their moral failings as long as it doesn't affect policy. I think what was happening, I don't know, Officer Nasty, like which debate you're talking about specifically. You do have to evaluate their policy effects, but oftentimes we do moral criticisms of individuals because their personal conduct will bleed over into their policy conduct. So like we should care more about policy than we care about personal morality, but personal morality is still like something that we can analyze. So anyways, I need to grab some water. I will be right back. I'm going to let Destiny and Dinesh entertain you. Thank you to the 170 people cross-platform that we have on stream today. We are live Monday through Friday, 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. So if you enjoy the content, then check out Valor Media Network, VALOR Media Common Spelling Network Common Spelling. Like I said, I'm live there 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. I'm going to thank Michael Hatchtube for 3 super chats, Grassroots with the 50, Grassroots with the 50, Fell Runner with the super chat, and Patriarch with the membership, and then also Charlie November with the gifted membership. Thank you guys. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them. I'm gonna go grab some water. I'll be right back. Enjoy the psychic damage without me.
Insider information.
What?
What insider information does the United States have for the...
All you have to do is read the Hunter Biden reports in which he claims I'm giving you all this information.
Information about how to run a business, because that's what his past was.
He's giving you information about the U.S. policy and posture vis-a-vis energy, and he's giving you information about various people in the administration.
Nothing insider.
How do you know that?
Because it was never, I don't even know if Palmer or Jordan alleged this. It doesn't show up in any reports ever. It was just always these vague stories of insider.
They're not vague stories.
Why wasn't he charged with any crimes at all? Why didn't the House didn't even recommend charges, despite the 50 million different subcommittees, special investigations, or whatever they tried to do on him? The facts are frustrating here. I know. I understand. It's a difficult position to be in. But the difference is like, so if I look at the Trump crypto stuff, there's nothing even remotely comparable in all of U.S. history to a president being able to solicit anonymous donations from anybody on the planet, right?
The House recognized that to propose criminal prosecution to Joe Biden's own DOJ was a fool's errand. That's why they didn't do it.
But they did. They literally had him plead guilty to convictions. That has to go through the federal Department of Justice.
Let me finish.
Because what you just said isn't true.
If he didn't do anything wrong,
wait, how did they convict him of crimes?
Pardon him, Joe Biden was very careful to pardon Hunter Biden for crimes going back to 2014. In other words, he gave him a retroactive pardon, not just for things to do with Burisma, but for any other crimes this guy did going back to when Joe Biden himself was the vice president.
Why were they able to convict him of some things if they weren't able to recommend any charges? Wasn't Hunter Biden convicted of the gun charge and the IRS charge?
Yes.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. You just said they weren't. Sorry, just pushing back a little bit, and maybe I should sit down a little bit before I engage, but the FARA violations were potentially like that. That's why the deal fell apart. When Hunter Biden was negotiating the deal, the judge said, how can you negotiate forgiveness for crimes that are not related to the original charge? Because you have it here that effectively he will be pardoned for FARA violations, even if you haven't investigated the FARA violations yet. And then the prosecution had to go back and go, oh, well, actually, no, he is liable for FARA. And then the defense freaked out, and then they withdrew from the deal. But somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Donald Trump has suspended the enforcement of FARA. So right now, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, where if you are a paid consultant that works on a foreign nation, I think the law is still on the books, but I think Donald Trump has suspended investigation. What is let me just Google it real quick just to make sure I'm not spreading misinformation. Trump suspends FARA enforcement. Pausing foreign corrupt. Oh, it's on the website. Pausing Foreign Corrupt Practices Act enforcement to further American economic and national security. By the authority invested in me as president by the Constitution and laws of the United States, Section 1, Purpose and Policy. Since in 1977, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act has been systematically and to steadfastly increasing degrees stretched beyond proper bounds and abused in a manner that harms the interests of the United States. Current FCPA enforcement impedes the United States foreign policy objectives and therefore implicates the president's Article 2 authority of foreign affairs. No, it was worse than I thought. Bro, this is worse than I thought. He didn't just suspend FARA investigations. He just did it through an executive order. He was just like, yeah, Go wild. Jen Winkler says, I've told you this 800 times. Have you? I don't know if you've chatted in my chat 800 times. You told me 800 times that Farah was suspended since February. Oh, that's wild. Jen Winkler says, I've been literally screaming this to you since Pisco and Cinema. Well, I think that, Jen, to be fair, I think I probably just didn't acknowledge it because I was just like, yeah, that sounds about right. I think you probably came into my chat and were like, Trump suspended all Farah violations. They're going crazy. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, Hedonic Samuel says, there's a lot to digest news-wise, to be fair. Yeah, it's the I have a lot going on meme. This is Gen X telling me that they've suspended Farah. I have a lot going on meme. This is it. Where's the alien? It's like, are you not shocked? Man, I got a lot going on right now. Trump is the biggest disaster to hit the US since 9/11. You know, I mean, definitely for Africans. Definitely for Africans. He's the worst thing to happen internationally since 9/11. That's for sure. Wow. All right.
He was convicted of those things, and
So
I
it
think
seems like they could recommend charges.
I think I've just given you what I think would be a good case to make. Now, why the powers that be decided let's not charge Hunter
Well,
Biden?
just so we can agree, what you
charge
just said had no basis in reality. They could recommend charges. They did. He pled guilty to those two things. So they always had the ability to recommend charges. Isn't it more likely that they, especially considering the origination of the investigation was a confidential informant who admitted about lying about everything, right? And that 10% from the big guy, interestingly enough, we're just citing the Russian leaks from the DCCC.
Absolutely
and from
not.
Hillary,
We're
right?
citing Hunter Biden's own business partner.
No.
Yes.
No.
It was Tony Bobulinski who revealed the 10% for the big guy.
No, there is no connection to Joe Biden there ever.
Tony,
That's never been made. It's never been made. They had the ability to investigate for years. They found nothing.
The 10% for the big guy, it comes from Hunter Biden. There was a meeting with Joe Biden, Bobulinski, Hunter Biden at the Milano restaurant in Washington, D.C., not very far from here in Georgetown, in which Joe Biden, who was very careful himself not to get into the business dealings, but he would always show up as if to say, listen, this is on the I'm involved. I'm supporting my son here. You make the deal with him. The money will then, part of it, come to me. All of this is laid out. Now, I agree. Merrick Garland.
Well, here, I'm curious. If we think that's what happened, what did Joe Biden do for his son? What was the quid pro quo here if we're alleging that? What even happened?
Sorry, and by the way, this is where this doesn't hit for me. I understand that I'm gonna fight. I'm not gonna fight my chat. I'm just gonna make a statement of opinion. Okay. If I go to you for quid pro quo as a government representative, and then I take the quid, but I do not deliver the quo, that might be technically less corrupt. It's still corruption. Okay. If I promise you, what is it? Have you guys never seen? You guys have never watched The Wire, have you? There's a rainmaker, right? It's actually a whole thing. Sorry. There's this whole thing in reference to the young gangster. I forget what the young gangster's name is, but he's trying to go legitimate or at least diversify his funds. So he gets linked up with a rainmaker construction guy, and the construction guy starts fleecing the young gangster for tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of the show in order to make his money legitimate and wash it. And a lawyer who's a skis-ball ends up consulting with him and laughs at him like months later when he's like, dude, these deals aren't coming through the way that I thought they were. Actually, he was bribing a politician, right? And so he was bribing a politician and he's not getting the results. 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 So he finally goes to the lawyer, and the lawyer's like, yeah, he's a rainmaker. So basically what happens is if the rain shows up, let's say you get granted the contracts, let's say that you get the money, the return on investment, then this politician will claim responsibility that he was bribing people and that he was making it work for you. But if nothing comes through, then he's going to blame the intransigence of the system and the bribes not working and this, that, the other. So then you throw more money at him. And so that's where, you know, if it can be demonstrated on a hit HBO TV show, which I think is based on a Baltimore's experience of reporting in the city of Baltimore, saying like, oh, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden are rainmakers where they take the quid but never deliver the quo, that doesn't really hit for me. Grassroots for 20, thank you, King. Why not launder their money like I do via Super Chats? Grassroots, if you ever diversify your income into black market sources of revenue that are not too morally dubious, and you do need to launder your money, just shoot me a DM.
This is the style
Hey Jonah, good to see you, King.
of the Corleone family. What does Joe Biden do for his son? Joe Biden's son is Michael Corleone. He's part of a corrupt family operation. The other brothers are
What did the
involved.
corrupt? What is the operation?
The operation.
Well, Patriarch says, what's the clean money to dirty money ratio? So let me tell you how I would do it if I was a criminal, okay? If I was a criminal and there was somebody who made money off of something that I didn't think was morally dubious, let's say the CIA approaches me and they say, hey, we need to launder money to make it clean in order to sell guns to freedom fighters that are going to overthrow fascist, theocratic, and jihadist and communist regimes the world over. Can you help us with the money laundering operation? Then what I would do is I would use stream elements, which I think takes a less of a percentage. I think they only take like 2%, 5%, something like that. And I would say, okay, make a bunch of alts, okay? Use a VPN, create a bunch of like alt, alt characters, Jonah Boy, Unork, bass guitar, Hans Mayer, Grassroots Hegemon, Christian Valeris, make a whole bunch of names like that, right? And then what you do is instead of using Super Chats, because Super Chats takes 33%, that's too high of a tax to launder the money, just Super Chat the money to me. Stream elements will take their 2%, their 5%, or whatever. I'll take 5%, 10%, whatever, whatever we deem as a fair percentage. And then I will in turn donate to an NGO, some random NGO, Save the Kids Africa AIDS Foundation. But Save the Kids Africa AIDS Foundation will have like a fake website. And what'll happen is if the IRS comes to me and they say, hey, you donated like, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to this organization, I could just be like, yeah, like I saw this charitable organization. I was really passionate about their project. I didn't do a lot of research on it, but, I gave them a bunch of money because I thought that, it would be, it'd be good for the world. And then, so that's kind of like an investigative dead end. But then that money ends up back in the pockets of the CIA via NGO money laundering. And then they can use that in order to overthrow communist regimes all over the world. So what I'm really saying is, CIA, if you're out there, send me a DM. Oh my God. Wait, hold on. Somebody said, Counterpoints poll, if you could rank how corrupt Joe Biden is compared to presidents back to George H.W. Bush, where would he place? I would say Joe Biden is probably as corrupt as the Clintons. I think the Bushes are probably a little bit cleaner than the Clintons because they weren't involved in Epstein. They had independent wealth from the oil industry. They have connections going back to the CIA and government work almost a century, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how much the Bush family used their office in order to enrich themselves because they were already rich. So I don't. So I think that the Bushes are less dirty, but not through like not because they're actually clean, but because they were already rich. Now, what's funny though is I can say that George W. Bush himself might be clean, But that doesn't mean that Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney aren't some of the dirtiest birds in the past 30 years. Because bear in mind, what happened with, sorry if I'm going on a rant, but I've been listening to this debate for long enough, and no offense, Destiny's brilliant. He's tearing apart Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh D'Souza is a fucking moron. It's my show. I know I could just ape the content for metrics, but I do want to talk at some point. So anyways, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld were a part of Bush 1. They were a part of the intel community in the 80s. They probably wanted to invade Iraq in 89, but they weren't ready to do so, like 89 to 92 when the tensions were heating up with Iraq. And so what they did is they created KBR, or they worked for KBR and Halliburton in the 90s and early thousands. They built up their KBR and Halliburton's nation building capacity, and then they looked for an excuse to invade Iraq, on which maybe they didn't individually profit. And by that, I mean, I can't tell you whether or not Dick Cheney actually has a checking account that KBR and Halliburton was paying into, but Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney's golf buddies made billions off of the war in Iraq. Billions. And I guarantee you, if Dick Cheney said, Martha wants to put in an extension to the house, or Martha has a charitable project, or Martha has this, Martha has that. I guarantee you, if he went back to his golf buddies, because he made them billions of dollars, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld were set for life. So, so once again, just to reemphasize it, I don't think George W. Bush himself profited from the war in Iraq. Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney absolutely did, to the tunes of billions of dollars. Michael Hatch says, I just got back and I'm listening to y'all, and now I think I'm in a criminal conspiracy. Dude, I thought you were CIA. Michael Hatch, I was gonna funnel this money back via shady NGOs right back to you. You're not my CIA handler? Oh, that's embarrassing.
Is to shake down foreign entities.
Shake down how? Like when
by
Witkoff goes to
promising
other
them-
countries and signs deals with leaders in Indonesia and Qatar and Ukraine and Russia for mineral deals? What about the $700 million in DoD contracts
let's
that
hold-
Trump's own children have gotten for extraction deals in Ukraine that the president himself is negotiating?
Okay.
Well, supposedly him, but it's actually Witkoff getting plans passed off from Russians, right? I can show
I mean,
you.
your
if you want
only
to talk,
mode of defense is the what about, and then you jump to something
Well, no,
else.
my mode of defense is the
Why
reason-
don't we stay with this? Okay,
wait. If we want to stay
when
with the
Joe
topic, let's
Biden
do it.
did not
Give me
have-
one concrete example of Biden corruption. What was one concrete example? Not like I think this happened and there was a story of this. What's one concrete example?
Yeah. There you go. CD SocDem also passed a bunch of ethanol subsidies. What kind of farms does his family own? Oh, right, corn. Yep.
Okay.
I just gave you like 5 for Trump.
All right. One concrete example is that Biden is vice president, and right about the time that Biden is designated as the U.S. man for Ukraine, a river of money now begins to flow from Burisma to Hunter Biden and his business partners, and all of this at a time when Burisma itself is under investigation for all kinds of fraud, and Joe Biden goes on camera
Yeah, it's unethical. What do you want me to say?
before an international council and tells you that he demanded that the prosecutor of Burisma be fired. And not only that, he got him fired. And he
All right, I'm good. We've been over this before. I think Rob Noor's been over it 10,000 times. I think Pisco's been over it 10,000 times. I think Destiny's been over it 10,000 times. I'm not gonna have anything new to say. Okay. So yeah, stop pocket watching. Stop pocket watching Hunter Biden. I parasocially love you. I'll see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. on Valor Media Network, VALOR, Media Common Spelling, Network Common Spelling. Bye, guys.